Hello and welcome to Listen Up. I'm Alex Coma. He's Joey Francali. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to start off with our top 5 topics. On kind of a discouraging note, the Hokies dropped another embarrassing game to an inferior ACC opponent, this time losing to Maryland at home on Senior Day. What do you make of this team at this point? And do they deserve to get to the ACC Championship game, which, believe it or not, is still a possibility?
Still possible. Here's the thing. The whole deserve, it's so hard to, it's really hard to quantify what that word means in this regard because, honestly, if you're picking the best two teams to play in the ACC Championship, which is what it should be, clearly nobody in the Coastal deserves to be in it. And if Duke were to lose to UNC to end the season when it's on the line, would they then deserve to go? No. With Georgia Tech? I mean, when you look at the fact that Tech could end up defeating all but one Coastal Division foe, and that would be the reason why they'd win some of these crazy tiebreakers, to me, that's a reason. But I digress, because I'd rather not talk about deserving to go to the ACC Championship and more about the inferiority, really, of this Tech team to play with any sort of consistency. And it's slightly embarrassing. It is, because you have to find a way to show up for home games. And this week on Tech Talk Live, actually, Willie Byrne kind of admitted that the team plays down to their opponents, which I appreciate the candidness from Willie, but at the same time, it's pretty discouraging when a player on your own team admits to playing down to their opponents. And, you know, I love Frank Beamer, and I want him to stay till whenever, and I'm not asking for him to get fired at all, but it is the coach's job, all the coaches, to prepare your team for that week's opponent and make sure that it's in their head that that game on the schedule is the most important, and it's the only one that you should be thinking about. And to me, if a player is saying that they aren't living or aren't playing up to their opponents, that is a situational, or I guess I should say it's an institutional failure that begins with the coaches.
Yeah, and I think it was Andy Bitter that wrote about it this week. But it's that Frank Beamer, he has some very defined characteristics. Everyone describes him as that guy that's literally always steady, no matter the situation. That's very valuable, say, when you lose, in the Orange Bowl by 1 billion points and then you're trying to come back the next season. Or it's very valuable, say, when the team is down late in the fourth quarter. Frank Beamer, he's going to be nice and steady. They can come back and they can win against Miami in 2011. But it's a little less valuable, say, when you need to emphasize the urgency in this final game. Tech has been handed so many opportunities to control its own destiny in the Coastal Division, and time after time after time, it seems like they just don't take it seriously. It seems like Frank Beamer always talks about making the ACC Championship game, winning the Coastal Division, and when they have the opportunity to seize the reins in the division, which they were gift-wrapped with the way that Miami came out and laid an egg against them, and the offense came together to win that game, and they sort of turned it down. And the seniors said it. They were disappointed seeing Maryland, storm the field from the sidelines on their senior day. And it's like, if you can't get them hyped up for that, what can you do it for?
It's your senior day.
It's their last game in Lane Stadium for a lot of guys who are going to be regarded very highly in the annals of Tech history, whether it's Logan Thomas or James Gale or Derek Hopkins, Jack Tyler. These are guys that we're going to look back on a couple of years ago and say, how the heck didn't they do more? What was happening that they lose in their senior day to an inferior team? It comes down to the fact that Bud Foster's defense, for whatever reason, is ill-equipped to defend running quarterbacks. We saw it with Rakeem Cato a little bit. We really saw it with C.J. Brown, who really hadn't done much before playing the Hokies.
He's not even a running quarterback.
He's not. And he went out there and he ran for 122 yards. He sure looked like one. A lot of times, it wasn't a factor of him making a crafty move. It was a factor of there just being a lot of wide-open field in front of him. There was good coverage, so he just took the smart option, and he would run for 10 yards every play. So it was a little bit of that, and it was a little bit of the fact that for all that it seemed the offense learned in the Miami game, whether it was the excellent blocking, the reliance on the run game, they sort of just forgot about all that and then went back to exactly what they were doing, dropping back time and again. And while the offensive line, I think, deserves criticism for not playing well, they allow 7 sacks, I think Logan also has to take a few as well, because once you see that Andre Monroe is getting the better of your freshman left tackle, maybe let's get the ball out in space a little bit.
Gotta have a clock.
And he didn't. I don't think he did.
Okay, I've got a couple more things to say about this. One, part of the reason why the ACC Coastal Division is a joke and why maybe urgency isn't on the mind is that really everything is still in front of them, and everything they needed to happen going into the Maryland game still has to happen because Miami did not beat Duke, because Duke beat Miami Tech still has to win against UVA, which they were going to no matter what always, and they still need Duke to lose a game. And they had to have Duke lose, even if they, Miami gift wrapped, as you said, which they did, a pretty lousy game, and Tech took it, but Tech still needed help from Duke.
Yeah.
And so it's just crazy to me to look at this, that essentially the Maryland game doesn't matter. It doesn't, but it's embarrassing to look at. Couple things. Since 2001, this is the first time since 2001 that Tech has lost their final 2 home games of the year. That is an embarrassment. That is a joke. Grant Knoll was the quarterback then. Grant Knoll and Logan Thomas was supposed to be a first-round pick. That's an embarrassment. Secondly, our lovely class of 2014 is the first class since the 99 class to see their first home loss, JMU, and their last home loss as well, Maryland. Pretty depressing. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, honestly, it frustrates me because we've seen it, they've got it, and they just didn't show it. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're losing depth in the secondary, and that sort of has a trickle-down effect. You see it, you don't really think about it. You think, oh, hey, with Brandon Faison and Kendall Fuller, they've got plenty of depth if they lose Kyle and Antone. But then, when you start thinking about it, oh, who's going to play on special teams when those guys can no longer play because they're starting? And I think it trickles down, and I think you saw that in the second punt return touchdown that they've allowed this season. I think you saw that in a lot of the tackles that they were trying to make in the defensive backfield, and they couldn't necessarily. That's nothing against a guy like Darian Green, who's had to play more. He's a redshirt freshman, and it's clearly not the same as being a freshman when you're a member of the Fuller family. So, and now you see that Kyle Fuller, he's having surgery. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. He may never play again for the Virginia Tech Hokies, which I think is a real shame. So, I think it just kind of sucks. It was really poor timing, and it coincides with, I think, a lack of urgency from the coaching staff. And like you said, I don't want to see Beamer go anywhere, but you just need to accept that this is what he's going to give you. He's going to give you a 10-win season, but he's also going to give you 2 dumb losses every year. That's just what it's going to be.